Welcome to Season 2 of the Run Strong Run podcast. This season, I'm mixing it up with powerful interviews from inspiring voices at the back of the pack and motivational episodes where I share running tips, advice, and encouragement to keep you moving strong. Because here, we believe one thing loud and clear: all runners count. Let's dive into this week's episode. I'm so excited today to have Dr. B, Bryon Solberg, join me on the Run Strong Run podcast, highlighting the stories from the back of the pack. And I have had the pleasure of sharing a marathon course with Dr. B now twice in the Carlsbad Marathon, first in Carlsbad in 2023, and just recently this year in January of 2024, where he completed his, hold on, 290th full marathon. Now, his story is so inspirational because he has had to learn how to walk twice in his lifetime due to spinal cord injuries. Yes, and now completing 290 full marathons. Okay, I'm going to let him tell more of his inspiring story. And so without further ado, welcome Dr. B to the podcast.
Hey, hi, Miss Stephanie. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks everybody for listening. Gosh, basically with my spinal cord, long story short, I was born missing a bone called the odontoid in the neck. Keeps your spinal cord from being sheared by your spinal column bones. Most people, most kids, they die when they're born or 2 to 3 years old when they fall off the trike. We don't know why I waited till 39 years old for it to start to make me symptomatic. They thought I had Lou Gehrig's disease or rapid onset multiple sclerosis. Turned out this was what was going on. I've had two surgeries, 24 and 23 years ago, almost this week, and I had to relearn to walk after both of them.
So I know because we've talked, I've read articles that have been written about you previously, that prior to this, finding out at 39 years old, you had a diagnosis that was happening. You were very active and you played multiple sports and football and things like that. And just like what you said, people normally do not live this long into their life. And so how was that for you mentally to all of a sudden go from playing all these sports, being very active, and then not even being able to walk?
That's a great question, and that's a big part of what we talk about with Challenge Athletes Foundation, which I'm representing here today, our CAF. You lose your identity, not only your activity, but in my case, I was a practicing critical care doctor, anesthesiologist, making a living with these hands, my left hand, especially, which is now curled and remains that way. But it's you lose your identity and you lose a lot of things. And one of the greatest works that I ever was exposed to was actually medical school by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Of her book is on death and dying, but it's really on loss and grief. And we all have that in our lives, all kinds of things. And this certainly affected there. There's the 5 stages. DABDA is how we remembered it for our final, thank goodness. Mnemonics, trust in doctors: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you can cycle back through those even when you get to another stage. And I think the one that most people land in, and I certainly was when I met Challenge Athletes Foundation, was in that second to last stage of depression, the cave we call it. When I work with they hook me up with other athletes to mentor who are usually incomplete or complete paraplegics. You're asking why me, and that's where I was. And I always work with them. It's okay to be there. Hopefully someday we can get you into that acceptance phase where you're asking what's next. Long story short, that's how it went. Many hours learning to rewalk. In my case, it was in the pool with floats and my arms moving. And if I slipped and fell a little bit, the lifeguard, I wore a life jacket. I'd fall on my back like a turtle. Lifeguard would get down. You okay, Dr. B? I'm like, I'm okay. And they come and get my feet underneath me again, and away I'd go.
Wow. So how was that journey then? What kind of spark went off that got you from learning how to walk, and now you do marathons, like what, one marathon almost every other week?
It's about that. Yeah. Um, that's in a year. And once again, that day in Challenge Athletes Foundation 2002, I went down there. I saw people missing arms, legs, athletes in wheelchairs, doing all these things. And I said, what's my excuse? And there really was none. So that's kind of what started at that time. And of course, CAF people I've met, people I've seen, people like yourself too, just meeting nice people have kept me going.
Yeah, I remember first meeting you in Carlsbad in 2023 and just being so inspired by you. And I think that's one of the things I love about being a pacer is all of the people I get to meet out on the course. And again, that's what's inspired me to start this podcast, to tell the stories of the people I meet out on the course. But I noticed that when you run Carlsbad, you normally run with two other people. Is that something often, like for all your marathons that you do, that you have people? I know one of the things you we're wanting to talk about is being a pacer versus a support runner. So I know in the Carlsbad Marathon, I'm out there as a pacer. Are these people running with you your support runners?
They are either official or unofficial support runners, or in other circumstances, I've actually been both unofficial or official in some of the world majors support runners for my friends. Some marathons, it seems like whenever I'm trying to Boston qualify, I'm always by myself because that's a weird place to be in. That's the race I'm running. It's a race as opposed to an event where I'm trying to get that Boston qualifying time for a year and a half in the future. I've gotten it 11 times and actually just got my 12th one a few weeks ago at Big Bear. The people I prefer to run with people just as friends sometimes, and I had two with me this year, which was a blast. Being a support runner uh, versus a pacer, I know it's a great job that you all do. You're tied to the clock. If you pass somebody who's struggling, you got to pat them on the back. You say something nice, give them a goo, but ultimately you have to keep going. And with the times I've been a support runner now, because I believe it's at least a dozen I've been a support runner for. Some even able-bodied. Their first marathons at Rock and Roll San Diego, which is a beast, of course. Um, I do keep the pace. We have our pace sheet, but at the same time, I stick with them, and that's what's really fun about it because we stay together. We want everybody to do well.
Wow, I love that. The first time you crossed that marathon finish line, post spinal cord surgeries, learning how to walk, and then crossing that very first 26.2-mile finish line. Explain that feeling and the emotion, or I don't know, just take us back there.
And that was actually that's why Carlsbad is so important to me because that was a 2002. This was just my 23rd Carlsbad marathon in a row. They tell me they don't know of anyone who has more of a streak than that. If they do, great, good for you. Mine's 23 in a row. And that was the first one I did by myself without the wheelchair.
Mm.
A couple of years before that, I had done it in the neck collar with some. That was Portland Marathon with some of the high school students. I was their Sunday school teacher and youth group leader up in Corvallis, Oregon. Uh, I think those big times. It was relief because I have such a respect for the distance of the marathon. When we met that first time in 23, I'm not always I try to be upbeat, but I'm always a little scared. I'm on edge. I'm nervous, as Mike Krzyzewski, Coach Krzyzewski always said of Duke. It's okay if you're nervous. It means you care. And I have such a respect for that marathon distance. Finishing always is a bit of relief. With friends, it's always a celebration too.
Yeah. Um, I love when you're talking about how a marathon, you have to have respect for the distance. And, people, when they hear of someone like yourself who's running multiple marathons a year, like one every other week, what do you say in response to people who are naysayers to say, oh, it's like really hard on your body to run that many marathons? Or people who might say, well, you're not actually running a marathon because you use run walk intervals. So talk more about that, about racing versus an event, or are you running a marathon? Are you not running a marathon?
Gosh, you bundled a lot there. So if I missed something, let me know. There's a lot to ask there. We talk about, I always say you need to know for every marathon, know the why. Why are you doing it? That'll get you there. And the marathon, and that answer can change during the marathon. The marathon will ask you why during it. Uh, it's covering the distance. I think there's three parts to a marathon. There's the first 20, the last point two, and that B6 in the middle. And my first 20 is about behaving myself with pace, and nutrition and hydration, so I can handle that 6 in the middle. I love what Galloway says: the most important mile of the marathon is the first mile. Don't go too fast. The second most important mile is the second mile. Don't go too fast. And by that point, I think you've got the butterflies gone. I guess they. That's a great question. I love that, and it's an answer I hadn't thought about. So I'll go off the top of my head. On every finishing page where they give the finishers, they call it a finishing page. They don't delineate how fast they were, how you got there. Did you run? Did you walk? Did you crawl? Personally, both because of muscle weakness with my leg braces and my cane, as well as my breathing, which is affected by my spinal cord injury, I can't really run with both feet off the ground for more than a minute. Hence, the intervals are what I use. I guess I'm real happy that they say when they give you a medal, it's a finisher's medal. When they give you a jacket, it's a finisher's jacket. They give those to the people who finish with wheels, wheelchair, hand cycles. They give it to people who finish on foot. So if someone were to say that I didn't run the whole marathon, I say, I agree with you. I didn't run the whole way. I even wonder if I run sometimes. My friends assure me that both feet do get off the ground at the same time when I'm shuffling. So does that kind of answer what you were asking there?
Yeah, I just think that sometimes slower runners who finish in the back of the pack, are held back from running a marathon because they think, well, do I deserve to be out there? Because I'm not running the whole thing. And so I often tell those runners that it doesn't matter the pace that you run a marathon. You are out there and you're doing it, and you deserve to be out there just as much as those 3-hour marathoners are
Yeah.
out there. So how do you treat your body well with doing so many marathons you do? Like, I mean, one every other week.
Let's just go back to that real quickly. I have done, I have had friends who are sub 4 hour marathoners, uh, who have Boston qualified, do the marathon with me. So they're able to tell, just like I could tell someone the difference that many people can't. I can tell someone what it feels like to be an able-bodied runner, because I was. I've finished marathons and hand cycles in a wheelchair, and of course, as a para athlete, it's a currently the term. Anyway, the friends that have who are faster runners who have done, say, Boston as my support runner or have run with me, they think it's actually a whole lot harder to finish in the slower time than it is. They're like, this is hard. I hurt. My back is tired. I have a blister. So interesting. That's an interesting thought about comparing them. I I feel that when I was, because I was about a 4 hour marathoner, only doing one a year before this happened. This is harder. It takes a lot longer. So I'm sorry. Your question was, what was the other question you asked?
Well,
Oh, taking care of myself.
I think this is again just so good, Dr. B, to stay on this topic for a moment because
Okay.
again, I think your perspective is so unique in that your body was different pre-spinal cord injury to now post-spinal cord injury, but you're not allowing that to stop you from going out and pursuing your dreams and to dream big and to inspire so many people along the way. So I just love it. I think you answered the question perfectly and beautifully for someone who is a back of the pack runner and is afraid to show up there at the marathon. Make no mistake that when you're doing a marathon in 6 hours, let's even go 7 hours, 5.5 hours at that pace, that's a long time on your feet.
I, and that is a thing that comes up. Are you a finisher? Because there are some marathons, and it's the way it needs to be. They have time limits, and they have strict time limits. And I do look at marathons when I'm signing up. Can I, with this course and with what my schedule is, do I have a realistic chance of finishing this marathon? For example, Las Vegas, it has been, I don't know if it still is a 5 hour, and I was being comped through a team that I was with an entry, and I had choice of the half or the full. It was a 5 hour full in some dark areas, tough running conditions from what I'd heard. And I said, I'm going to do the half because I need a really special day to be sub 5, which I've only done once post spinal cord injury. And after how beat up I was, because we can talk about your next question, I don't want to ever do it again. So I think that, and now some of these marathons, and with mainly marathons, when I'm doing, for example, I did 5 and 10 days last June. There are people out there 9, 10, up to 12 hours. They inspire me. I am humbled by them because that is so hard to go that long for a marathon. So I think that if you are a finisher, at times there are time limits, and that decides whether you are a finisher or not. Fortunately, this one company, mainly marathons, they say there is no time limit. And I have watched people take 12 hours. God bless them. Taking care of my body, I think a big part of it is pacing. When I'm doing 5 in 10 days, or for example, I've done what they consider the grand slam of ultras. I've done 50Ks, I've done double marathons, I've done 100K, which is 62 miles, and I had a 24-hour time limit. Once again, I'm signed up if I'm going to get to 100K, and then I've done a 163 miler. Those, with my doctor, with my coach from Challenge Athletes Foundation, we worked on pacing, and their big job for me was to slow down. No running for the 163 miler specifically. We had plenty of time to do it, but what was going to happen is if I broke down, then I wouldn't do it. So pacing and what you're doing it for example, I'm doing 5 and 10 days. I'm not planning on getting my feet both off the ground, which you couldn't equate with running. We'll just say getting both feet off the ground at the same time. I'm not planning on doing any of it unless I'm trying to escape an animal or a car. So pacing is a big part of it. Various massage techniques. For me, I use a form of a stick. I love the thought where you don't take a warm shower or a hot bath for at least 48 hours, lukewarm showers, eating, hydration, resting afterwards. Some of these people do every day in a row, and I'm inspired and humbled by them too. It sounds good that I'm doing 5 and 10 days, but just know I'm not the A+. I'm not the gold team out there. Having that 40 hours with the braces off my legs, because the braces do bruise and they do cut at times, unfortunately. Having that 40-hour break does make a big decision for me. So part of recovery starts with your decisions on what you're doing, the course you're doing, the type of course, how much fast you're going to go, and how you're going to take care of yourself, not only after, but during the actual.
I think that's so important. I love that. And how you're taking care of yourself. And that's interesting. You mentioned about a lukewarm shower. You said like you don't take a hot shower until like after 48 hours post marathon. I've never heard of that before because I'm usually someone who I like a hot shower. I've only done an ice bath once, and it was after my very first marathon, and I said never again because I could not get warm after that. But what's kind of the science behind that?
Well, I read that in an article. I'd love to say I made it up. I believe the science behind it, and once again, this is not me as a doctor talking. This is just me as someone who thinks it makes sense. Is that the warmth actually can exacerbate the trauma to the muscles. I don't do ice baths. That would cram me up even worse. But I do also remember anecdotally when I used to do that one marathon a year in Portland around my birthday, I would jump in the most wonderful hot jacuzzi afterwards. And 2 hours later, I couldn't walk. it was a preamble, foreshadowing for how I was later in my life, I guess. And once I stopped doing that, stopped warm jacuzzis, especially after I haven't been in one in years, then I felt my recovery was better. That's just me. So I think it's important for all these things, whether I'm coaching or leading or helping somebody, is try it. It's not dogma. If you don't like it, don't do it that way. But so does that answer your question there, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to think about that next time I run a marathon to maybe not have my shower be so hot to help aid in my recovery.
It was an article I read somewhere over at least 15 years ago. And since I've done that, I do better. So
Okay. I'm reading over right here the topics that we were going to talk about, and you mentioned about this earlier, and I just want to touch back about it again. The three parts of a marathon, and your fueling and hydration. What are some challenges you face? Because I believe I read in one article is that you for your hydration, you can't wear anything around your waist due to the spinal cord injury. So how do you handle that on a race course?
I have incisions all over my body, so it's kind of gotten to the point, and what's strong and what's not. Um, the race courses are actually pretty cool because if you think about it, it's a catered workout. If you're doing Boston, I have to skip some aid stations. They have it every mile, and if I drink too much, I'm having to go to the restroom too much. I'm fine with I'll carry a very small bottle in a pocket, in my back pocket of the type of shorts. I like shorts with pockets because it keeps the weight away from my shoulders and my neck, as well as my two incisions in my lower back. There's some ones that don't have an aid station till the first 3 miles. And so just a small little bottle of water or Gatorade with me. And for this first bit, otherwise I pretty much I trust the course. I do carry the gel that I prefer in my back pocket, but then I don't have to carry hydration on the road races. And most aid stations, even for ultras, they're within 8 miles of each other. And a 20-ounce bottle for me, that's 2.5 ounces per mile is enough. And if I get to it and I'm really thirsty, I'll fill up the bottle, drink half of it, then I'll refill it. Unless it's really hot. Um, that's so I don't usually carry fluids with me. I have only ever had one event once in that the the aid station ran out of water midway. But there's restrooms around where you can go in and stick your hand under a faucet with cups of water. In this case, we went to there was a taco shop, and I walked up with $5. I said, I need 2 big ice waters because ice water is free. I said, okay, I'll still take 2, and I put the 5 in the tip jar. And for me and my other runner, we were running. So yeah, so I haven't had that problem. I have heard people with those. I guess if it's super hot and an aid station's out, that's rough. So maybe a small bottle in your pocket is not a bad idea. I just don't.
Okay. For the marathon, I know you've talked about this a couple times, knowing your why. So what is it that keeps you going, doing marathon after marathon? I know you just recently qualified again for Boston at Big Bear. So you might just be like, okay, I'll just sit back and relax. And I've earned my BQ time, but like, what keeps you going? What's your why?
Well, it's good to have a what's next and why. Part of that why is I worry. I mean, I know I'm a lot closer to my last marathon than I'm into my first marathon, both due to age and time on my spine. As my neurosurgeons remind me, we laugh. I'm way off warranty at 24 years coming up here on March 8th. Both my surgeries actually were on March 8th. Isn't that cool? When that second one was like, I just didn't know if I could do it again. I guess I enjoy it. It's a dream. If your dreams don't scare you a little bit, your dreams aren't big enough. I have some goals. I'd like to get to 300 marathons. I'd like to get to 25 Carlsbads. I'd like to get to a dozen Bostons. If I can't, it's okay. I'm really grateful for those things. Steve Prefontaine would talk about if you don't do all that you can, then you're wasting the gift. So in a way, this is a gift for me. I enjoy it so much. I enjoy going to Boston and being able to take a friend as my support runner. I always pick someone who from a running group who's a fairly strong runner, but also would never qualify on their own. That's a very special time. Some people, their Bostons may merge together, but mine, I have specific memories. I know who I was with at that time. I don't want to waste the gift. I don't want to get to the point and say, gee, I wish I would have done a few more when that day comes when I can't do anymore. Goals are important too, but I think it's the friendships and the fun along the way.
I love that so much. I love too how you like each Boston Marathon is so special to you, not just because it's a Boston Marathon, but because it's the people who you're with. And I can just tell that people are just probably just jumping at the chance to get to share those miles with you just because of your positivity, of your joy, of your inspiration to others. I love that you're a coach and that you're really truly like someone who wants to give back to the community. And I love too how you just said, like you believe that you have been kind of given this like second lease on life, like this gift. Again, you are what's believed to be the longest known survivor for this spinal cord injury. Like usually people who have this spinal cord um, diagnosis died at a very young age. And here you are very young still
Oh.
and doing marathon after marathon after marathon. I don't like to say to someone, how old are you? I like to ask, how young are you?
As a doctor, I used to always say that too. How old are you? And even I just had my 62nd birthday. So I'm getting up.
62nd birthday. I love that.
I will say too that Boston, I get nervous about Boston. And the reason I get nervous, even though I'm not trying to get a good time there, I just want to know what my finishing time is. I love this my very first tour of the course was from a Boston podium finisher back in his day. And he said, Boston is not a race, it's an event.
Mm.
Race somewhere else. Enjoy Boston. Qualify, party at Boston, qualify somewhere else. And I have friends, and I just ache for them because, and you know, at least one of them who goes there every year and tries to qualify. And they may or may not qualify. And if they do, it's never by enough. And they're sad at the end of Boston. And I ache for them because I have just had a 6.5 hour party because I get a 7 hour time limit, usually about. I just go out and have a 6.5 hour party out there, taking pictures, petting the dogs, jumping on the trampoline, which my neurosurgeon does not like me to do. so, um, so that's fun. But I do get nervous because technically my support runner who is giving up their time, their treasure, and to come out there, they're technically not supposed to finish if I don't, even though I make them pinky promise that if I can't, drop me at the aid station at the medical tent. I still want you to finish. And they say they won't, but I tell them I really want them to. But I do get nervous because once again, respect for the distance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even a little fear, but yeah, I don't care. I fear the distance.
Yeah. And I think that means that you are a courageous person. And I think too, if I were really to stop and think about it, even for myself, I mean, I'm a baby runner in comparison to you. My number of marathons is only 37 marathons to date right now.
You
So I
have a
do a
lot
lot.
more comments. You have a lot more common sense than I do.
But it is so true. Like you just never know what those 26.2 miles are going to bring. And I think just even as a pacer, I always like to remind runners around that just because you're holding that sign and have paced other marathons, anything can happen and we're not robots. And so yeah, I do think there is those nerves or that fear lining up at every 26.2 mile, because you try to be as prepared as you can, but again, things happen.
And it usually is life in a day. You have highs, you have lows, you have times when you're scared, times when you're happy, times when you're not feeling very good, times when you can help somebody. It's life in a day.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard that described before as a marathon having kind of like three parts. And I believe you said like the first 20, the last point two, and then that horrific 6 miles.
The B6 in the middle. And usually, yeah, usually it can rear its head for me. It's reared its head bad for me early as mile 18. Actually, it's reared its head earlier for me at mile 13 when I've been stupid and not watched. I felt, because the first mile, both in training and in a marathon, it's a liar. In training, the first mile, if it's not feeling good, it'll probably get better. And same in a marathon, that first mile, boy, you feel good. And you just got to be careful not to go too fast. Oh, I feel so good. And I had a marathon I can even remember it was Carlsbad 2016. I was feeling it. I ran. It was a different course. It was much. I like this course much better. I love the two loops. We used to go up Palomar Airport Road, and I got to the top of Palomar Airport Road, and I was at the hill. I was feeling so great. I ran the entire way down. Stupid. Skipped my intervals. And I got to mile 13. I almost wasn't going to finish. I had to sit down. I was so bad. So, but yeah, usually between 18 and 22, I'll know if it's going to be really bad. That B6 in the middle. And there's times, like Big Bear, I felt so good. That last 5K, I had the goal. That was a race. I said, okay, I'm going to skip some walk intervals because I'm within a 5K now, and I can do it. But yeah, the three parts to a marathon, life in a day. And the tough part of that life usually comes between 20 and 26.
It's so incredibly true. I just remember I raced a marathon recently, because often I'm pacing now, and so it's very rare that I'm racing a marathon. And I took a little selfie video of myself like at mile 13 and said, "Oh, I'm like right on pace, or I'm a little bit ahead of pace, and I'm feeling really good. I just need to keep this up." But I knew in my head, I'm like, okay, this is still pretty early on in the race, mile 13 at the halfway mark. And sure enough, those final 6 miles were a little tough. But talk about like a looped course. So that marathon that I raced, it was you did a loop 5 times. And so like on those final two loops, that was little rough for me in those final miles. But Carlsbad, it's interesting how it's like a two looped course. And especially when we're like finishing our first loop, that's when we like run into the half marathoners. And then like we're starting our second loop, and we see on the other side full marathoners who are like finishing. How does that have any effect on you mentally as you see all these people passing you, or you see people on the other side of the loop finishing, or does that just doesn't really seem to phase you much?
I guess it's happened so many times now. I'm good with it. I'm good with it. I look at my pace sheet. I'm good. I got my pace sheet. I'm good. Don't be stupid, I tell myself. And I cheer them on. And I humbled and inspired by them. It's good for you. Yeah, I wish I was going that fast, but it's not me. And
Because sometimes on marathon courses, I mean, Carlsbad isn't a huge marathon, not the smallest I've ever done, but also not super big. I can get kind of lonely in the back of the pack, kind of quiet. Spectators are not quite there, and so how do you combat that when in those later miles and it's quiet?
And that's actually something you haven't had to have as much as before when it wasn't a two loop, when we didn't run into the half marathoners. Because when we used to Palomar Airport Road, the first year was a double loop, was in 2018. That was my 100th marathon. That's why I can remember. And once again, I remember who I was with, that we didn't have it. We wouldn't get back to the coast till mile 16. And the very slow half marathoners were there. And we even lost them because we had to go farther. We had to go up to La Costa, and then we wouldn't see him again. And that was hard because actually, when I was by myself, I look at way ahead of me. I could see one person. I look behind me, way behind me. I do run when I'm by myself. I do run with music in one ear, and this is a very special playlist of songs that I just love. And some are fast, some are slow. All have great memories associated with them. And so I kind of check out. And I haven't had to run Carlsbad by myself in a while. But for example, I ran Big Bear. The person who was supposed to be my support runner, um, they they had to slow up a lot at mile 13, and they were nice. They said, "Just go." I said, "I'm going. I'm racing today. I'll see you at the finish." So that's a great point you make. There are times you're alone, and that loneliness, being alone, can have you feel lonely. And to recognize it and say, this is where I want to be. I get to do this today. It's one of my G's in my life. That's the E. I get to do this today. Bill Walton, love that. I get to ride my bike today as he puts his hands up. So that's kind of how I combat it. That, the music, picturing myself finishing, because that would always usually happen in that B6 in the middle. It's a great question. Yeah, fortunately, Carlsbad is not nearly as lonely or alone as you used to be.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's good.
what has been, since I mean you've run hundreds of marathons, what's been your toughest marathon ever?
Well, the toughest was the 163 when I was getting close to 100 miles, which was my ultimate goal for that. It was I wanted to get to 100 mile and complete that grand slam of ultras. The 63 after was just icing on the cake. I was so tired. My back was so tired. My legs were so tired. I was literally doing about the loop, which was under a mile, and laying down for 15 to 20 minutes because I was just so tired. But I didn't want to lay down and go to bed because I didn't know if I was going to be able to get up and walk again. I wanted to finish that 100 miles. That was hard. And fortunately, I was out there with other 6-day event participants, and they would see me get up and they would slow down, and one or more would stumble with me through another lap. And my last lap, I had 6 people with me. They had other things that they needed to be doing. It was 10 o'clock at night and dark, and in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That was hard. I felt like I was relearning to walk. I was so tired that day.
I just cannot imagine. It just like blows my mind to even think about that. And so just the mental strength that takes when your body is so tired. I mean, the only reason that you were getting up was that mental fortitude. And again, what you said, like picturing yourself finishing. And I love too what you just recently shared about gratitude and saying like, I get to be out here and I get to be doing this. I love that. What did your neurosurgeons have to say when you're like, I want to go run over 100 miles?
We talk about pacing. We talk about goals. Both him and my doctor are really glad I'm not doing half Ironman anymore. Swimming is a whole other thing. I have a lot of challenges with that. Biking, they don't like me on the bike with my training, even with my training wheels, because I can fall. We do talk about pacing. The good news, bad news of that 100 miler was it was an international event, and there were runners from all over the world, runners, walkers, whatever you want to call them, movers. Let's call them movers, because even there were Hall of Fame ultra marathon runners out there that day, including the first lady who ever did race across America. And let me tell you, we talk about running and walking. She walks a lot, and it's not a problem. If the Hall of Fame ultra runner can walk a lot, why is it a problem? So I'm sorry, what was the question? What was the question? I'm sorry.
No, again, I'm just in amazement of you doing this 100 mile. It's just
Oh, it
mind
was
boggling.
international. It was internet. The timing was all internationally broadcast on the web. And my goal, I was way faster than my goal was supposed to be. I was only supposed to do, there was enough time if I would do 17 miles a day, 6-day event, 144 hours. 17 a day, no more than 20 in a 24-hour period. However, I did finish my 100 miles in 55 hours, which was not part of the thing. I left my phone off. I did turn my phone on afterwards, and both my coach and my doctor had sent me text with the shaking my head emoji. But then I was good because actually I didn't lay. I laid down. I was asleep as long as I could. I woke up the next morning, didn't know what I was going to do, but my body was fine. So then I continued on to get to 163. We do have. They're great. We talk about it. We have our plans. By and large, in the main, I usually follow the plan. That time I did not, but otherwise I follow the plan.
Okay. I'm curious. Before I ask you the final question, I have one more other question, which is I noticed for Carlsbad, you and your other runners you're with tend to wear these fun hats. Are they like crabs or something? What's the story
Crab
behind
lobster
the fun hat?
hats, yeah. Technically, it's a crab hat, but yeah.
And why?
Long story short, my very one of the early ones I was doing rock and roll. That was my second one down here by myself. My kids were in first and third grade at the time. There was no chip real tracking at the time, and I was way ahead of schedule. And everybody was concerned I was somewhere, I was dead because they couldn't find me on the course. And my kids came up with the ideas of I had many funny hats. I was a I was a volunteer, ran traffic, and I would wear a different funny hat every day that people gave me to just help people smile. And my kids said, "Dad, why don't you wear one of your funny hats?" The crab lobster hat is one that doesn't bother me, and so I wear it a lot. I wear it to most of my events. I don't wear it if it's a business day. I did not wear it at Big Bear. I get people who know me give me a bad time. Hey, where's the crab lobster? I said, day's business. Des Linden, black socks, black hat. And we're business today. That's where that came from. That's where.
I love that. Again, Dr. B, you are such an inspiration, and I just love your positivity and your outlook on life. Final parting words for someone who is tuning in and they are filled with fear. They don't know if they can do it. They want to run a marathon, perhaps they want to run an ultra marathon. What piece of advice would you give them to pursue this goal they have?
Well, good for you for being scared, because the two things I talk about your dreams. If your dreams only include yourself, they're not big enough. And if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. Start slow. Start small. Start with something you know you can finish, like a 5K. That's got a huge long time limit. Same with your 5K, your 10K, your half marathon, your full. Find people to go with you. The slower you go, if you want to go far, go slow. If you want to have fun, go with friends.
I love that. I was just re-saying that to myself. If you want to go far, go slow. If you want to have fun, go with friends. I love that so much. And people ask me, why do you keep pacing these marathons? And it's because I'm having fun. If I weren't having fun, I wouldn't be out there and doing it. And it seems like that's the same for you too, Dr. B. I love that you love to have fun. And so I cannot wait to see you. Carlsbad 2025. Oh my goodness, that will be Carlsbad number, what is that, 23?
24 for me, I hope, if I'm still healthy enough to keep doing it. I don't know what number marathon it'll be. I'm hoping Boston this year will be number 300. So I got a little bit of work to do between now and April. But I got them scheduled, and including catching states 40, 42 through 47, hopefully in March.
Okay. So wait, so 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. So 6 full marathons in March?
Yeah,
Wow. And people thought I was crazy doing 3 full marathons in
I
March.
got a
See,
couple
I
to do
love it that
here.
I'm speaking to someone a little crazier than myself.
Yeah, well, yeah, I saw your thing. If I counted right, you're doing 24 events in 24, which is pretty cool.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. I'm
Oh,
usually
yeah,
only
I think I got
count
you
the full
there.
marathon. So
I did. Yeah. So
well,
I think some of them are halves and two, but that's cool. 24 events in 24. We'll see if I counted right. It was just, if I got it right, it's just fate. It's just, the way the stars align, that you didn't even know that when you did it. But I made a screenshot because I had to take my cursor and count off of your Instagram story. Yeah.
well, and I'm all about the numbers too, because I had to try to squeeze in some marathons because I wanted my 40th marathon to be for my 40th birthday week. And I actually got married on 12/12/12 and had 12 people in attendance. It just kind of happened to work out that way. I should have gotten
Oh,
married at 12/12 p.m. because that would have even more perfect. But I love numbers. So oh man, I'm gonna have to look that up now. 24 events in 2024.
I could have counted wrong, but I tried to take a screenshot, blow it up, and take my cursor down it. Keep every morning, every night before you go to bed. Grateful. That's one of my other 5 of my G's. Find 5 things you're grateful for, both in the morning when you get up and the night before you go to bed. That gets the optimism going for the day.
Absolutely. Well, one of my G's for today, one of my things I'm grateful for is getting the chance to talk to you and to hear more about your story. I cannot wait to see you again in person. Where can people find you when they want to connect with you and send you a message of telling them how inspiring you were? What was the best place for people to find you?
Well, that's kind. I'm on Facebook or Instagram. Dr. Bryon for both, I believe. Yeah. Dr. B, Dr. Dr. period, and then it's Bryon, Bryon.
Well, perfect. And we'll link those two in the show notes so people can find you. So again, thank you so much for being here and a guest and sharing your inspiring story. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Miss Stephanie.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Run Strong Run podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes for your free download created to help you on your running journey. Stay connected with me on Instagram at RunStrongRun or visit my website at runstrongrun.com. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love your support. Leave a rating, write a review, or share it with a fellow runner. Until next time, keep running strong and running happy.